Hello there! So, battle themes. They can be some of the most memorable parts of your soundtrack, and for Pokémon, that's no different. So today, I'll be looking at what makes a Pokémon battle theme, and then at the end, I'll be composing my own Pokémon battle theme to demonstrate everything that we've learned. But before we get into that, quick disclaimer. I am not an expert. I have no formal education, so keep that in mind. All this stuff I'm spouting out my mouth is just the knowledge that I've accumulated, simply repackaged and regurgitated in my own words and whatever music theory jargon that I've picked up. And of course, these are not rules by any means, they're just guidelines. You won't find them in every battle theme and especially so in more recent soundtracks, but you'll still find them. And with all that out of the way, let's get started. And what a better way to start than with what you first hear when the battle theme starts, the end. Anyways, you know, that usually 2-bar long barrage of notes of complete chaos designed specifically to disorient you. However, it's not all just random notes. There are a couple tools that are used. There are patterns that can either be static or change. Pedal tones, and a whole lot of chromatic movement. Basically just about anything that you can fit into 2 bars as long as it captures the feeling of getting jumped by a Pokémon or youngster Joey. Second thing to note is this rhythm. This rhythm is everywhere in the Pokémon battle theme. It's probably one of the reasons why you can recognize a Pokémon battle theme on a first listen. It's that iconic. This can be shown in many different forms, such as in its pure form, and a variation of it, or it can just be implied in some other way. Next up is the Phrygian Scale. To explain the Phrygian Scale, let's stick to 2 most common scales in most music today: major and minor. For this section, we only need the minor scale, so anyways, you take the minor scale and then you take the second note from the bottom going up, and then you lower it by a semitone, making it a flat 2 note. This is what gives a song that Phrygian feel. However, the Phrygian scale is often too dark for most situations, but not dark enough for, say, horror, so it lends itself well to a battle theme. However, that's not to say that the entire song is built out of the Phrygian scale. Most composers tend to just evoke the Phrygian feel from time to time to give it extra color, so to say. And there are a couple ways of doing that. First of all is using the 1 to flat 2 vamp, which is a repeated chord progression. Or just using the flat 2 or flat 9 note in general. I would name more examples, but I'm not exactly fluent in dissecting other people's music in this way, so unfortunately I'm cutting it short here. All that's important is that the flat 2 note is used from time to time to give the song more tension and more color. Alright, so this is a pretty interesting one. Contrapuntal composition, or just the heavy use of counterpoints. To explain, I'm going to once again contrast it with popular music today. Most music today uses a homophonic texture, which means that you can split the song into 3 distinct voices: the melody, the chord, and the bass. However, due to gameplay limitations, Junichi Masuda instead used contrapuntal composition, where the chord part is just completely taken out, and there are just different lines playing at the same time. Basically, there's a contrapuntal texture when there are different musical phrases being played together. All these phrases and lines may depend on each other to imply a harmony, but they're all still independent in that they can all just play their own lines separately. Each note of an implied harmony is rather spread along all those different lines and voices instead of being played by one unified voice to ground the entire song. This is one of the reasons why the Pokémon OST feels like it has so much more happening than what's shown. To demonstrate, here's a little piece that I wrote with a homophonic texture. Notice how, while the melody is playing, the piano plays the entire chord to just completely lay it out on the listener what chord it is. And now, here's that same piece when I apply contrapuntal writing to the piano. Notice how the piano is now simply playing its own melodies on 2 different voices, a lower one on the left and the higher one on the right. The same harmonies are still implied, but it gives a much different feel. And lastly, just like everything else, we need to take breaks. In most of the more common battle themes you hear, like say the trainer battle themes and the wild Pokemon battle themes, they can usually be split into an A and B section. And while the A section is where the song hooks you, the B section usually serves as the breather. The B section can usually achieve this by either spacing out rhythms to longer intervals, taking the song's vibe to a different place. Or just otherwise giving you something else to listen to other than the main battle theme. Alright, now that all that's out the way, let's put all that knowledge that we've crammed to our heads into use and make a Pokemon battle theme. For this demonstration, I'll be making a battle theme for Magearna. Why Magearna? Why not? First of all, I'll just play it in its entirety and then I'll hand it off to future me to explain the song further. So without further ado, Here it is. So here's the project in FL Studio. When I started work on the song, I wanted to lay the groundwork with a couple themes. So the general ideas I want to convey. And those themes are royalty, because Magearna was made for a royal family, mechanical, because Magearna is a robot, and mystery, because it's a mythical Pokemon. And so with that, I decided on the instrumentation. First of all, we've got this drum kit from Pokemon Black and White. And for the mechanical theme, I decided to add in this industrial drum kit. For the bass, I decided to go with this acoustic bass, also from Pokemon Black and White. But then I also went with a synth bass from the Elite Four battle theme. Oh yeah, another thing to quickly mention is that this bass line going from the first note of the chord to the fifth is very common. I just didn't think it'd be worth mentioning that, but you know, might as well now than never. And then I added in the harpsichord. It's from the SGM sound font. Then I also added in strings. I added this string from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. And to contrast that, I also added in these more realistic strings from the SGM sound font. After that, I added in some piano. It's also from the SGM sound font. And then I decided on using this synth as one of the leads. And last but not least are some brass from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. So with all that groundwork laid down, I decided to start composing the song. To start off, there's the intro. It's composed on a couple things. This drum pattern, this descending bass, this repeating harpsichord pattern which keeps going up and up, this chromatic string part, and then some pedal tones by the piano. And then I also decided to add in this little ascending line from the synth to contrast the bass. In the actual start of the song, I decided to start with the harmonic minor scale. To contrast, here is the natural minor scale. As you can see, the 7th note here is raised by a 1 semitone. This makes it much easier to write harmonies, hence the name harmonic minor, but it also gives the song a much more classical feel, which is what I'm trying to go for. This sort of opening section is just standard Pokémon shtick. A sort of lead by the harpsichord at first, and then some extra lines from piano here on the left hand and the right hand, just sort of doing their own thing. And then the acoustic bass is outlining this rhythm, as I've mentioned earlier. And then I start to build into the hook of the song with this sort of expanding strings. As you can see, it's not really noticeable at first, but it begins to sort of seep more and more into the mix. And during this hook, the song sort of changes into Phrygian. The Phrygian feel is evoked by this natural C. If I go here and take on the minor natural scale, you can see it's supposed to be a C sharp. But we're using the Phrygian scale, so we take it down, and there you go. It's now Phrygian. And then, here's the second part of the hook, where the brass comes in. Now, as you've noticed, the strings and the brass play entire chords, which is not very counterpoint of the song. But again, they aren't really rules, they're more or less guidelines. And I basically try to banish that by writing these strings and brass parts as if all these different, basically, voices are their own. So for example, this bass sort of just goes on its own, it rises up, goes a little down, jumps up, and then goes down again, while the mellow voices are sort of just playing its own thing, and then there's this melody on the top. These top two voices are actually layered by the strings, as you can see here. Layering is pretty powerful if you want to make a line stand out. But anyways, while all that's going down, the piano is playing some pretty fancy chords. The song mixes a lot of the contrapuntal and homophonic textures, and eventually this evolves into this own phrase to contrast the harpsichord, which is just playing its own thing this entire time. And here I want to take the song into a pretty novel direction. So here it is, modulating from 4/4 to 3/4, which is otherwise known as waltz. As you notice, during 4/4 there are 4 beats in a bar, but in 3/4 there are only 3. This is mostly used in songs like waltz and ballroom music. And I took full advantage of that by reintroducing the more realistic strings. But I'm not just going for ballroom music here. I decided to also mix it in with some more industrial percussions. modulates back to 4/4. I had to change up a lot of things for the 3/4 section. For example, the bass here is playing this pattern. Instead of the usual 1-5-1-5 or inverted 5-1-5-1. It's instead playing this 3-1-5-1-3-1 pattern. And as you can tell, the piano is playing this sort of 3-bar pattern as well. The strings are also playing it, but they change it up. Anyways, modulating back to 4/4 was a pretty big challenge, so I decided to sort of foreshadow the loop back into this section. First of all, through the drums here. And I also had to slow down the synth bass section. And then there's also the string section, which you've just heard resolves when it switches back to 4/4. But anyways, that's pretty much the composition done. A lot of the smaller important parts are things like dynamics and panning and all that. For example, in this piano part, as you can tell, the right hand part is playing on the right ear, and the left hand part, the lower one, is playing on the left ear. This sort of helps it stand out a little more and spread out the voices to different places. And as you can tell on this expanding strings part, the intensity of each note increases all at once. So it expands so much faster, and the next part feels so much more open than the last. And on this brass section, it's a little unnecessary, but oh god, this is a fucking mess. Anyways, this top part here and this bass are all playing near the middle, and then these two middle voices are playing on the outer layers. This sort of gives it a much richer feel, sort of as if you're actually listening in a concert with the brass players all around you. And then in the harpsichord section, when it's not the main melody, I put it off to the side. And then when it's time for the piano to come in, I decided to switch it to the left ear. Just to keep it a little fresh, you know. And also to give the piano a little bit more space since it plays on the right ear. Well, the left ear still plays some chords, but you know, you don't really process that all that much. At least not consciously anyways. And you can also make the music feel much more alive by introducing slides. As you can see here, this F sharp and B slides down to an F and A sharp, but you don't really register it as an F and A sharp. You just register it as an F sharp and B going down. You can also use it to add a little bit more spice. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to make your music feel more alive. This doesn't really just apply to Pokemon battle themes, but from what I can tell, Pokemon battle themes tend to use it so much more than everything else that I've analyzed before. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me, I guess. Alright, that's about it for today. I hope you've learned something, and if you like it, please do leave a like, comment, whatever. And of course, this is my first ever time doing a video essay, so if you do spot out mistakes or you have criticism, please do actually voice them out. But anyways, that's all for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.